Or shall we start?
Well,
What do you even? Okay, so the question that we want to ask is like, why did you start?
Oh, right.
But like, what would you even say it is? Like, why did you start becoming a letterpress printer? Or, like, why did you start letter pressing?
Letterpress printing?
why
Letterpress
don't you
printing.
first tell us what you started? What did you
Yeah.
start?
It's such an awesome question. It's so philosophical. So where where I started to start, I mean, this might take you, this might take longer than you think, but it's such a great question. So where did I start? Um, really started when I'm out of high school, right? And my parents, I've been educated in these private schools like my whole life. Um, they're they're the Dutch had like in kind of invented what did they invent? They invented public schools in a way, and because I happen to be Dutch, um, I went to these Dutch parochial schools. So I finish high school, and it's very typical parochial, you know, moralistic, um, kind of an education that you would expect from a church school. And then I went to this 2 year college on the south side of Chicago. They had just started it, and there were a bunch of Dutch philosophers from Holland there that got their mitts on us, and they just started to teach us philosophy and about what it means to start. Their language was a priori. If you don't know where your starting point is, you don't know where you're going intellectually. So they made us study and think about philosophy, and we were completely lost and at sea. And they would try to teach us about the philosophers that came before Plato and Aristotle. They were like the pre-Socratic philosophers. And and for 2 years we were like lost. But then if you get a taste for this stuff, it kind of changes you, and you kind of get like really interested in it, and you see the world in that way. So really, when I found myself at Trinity Christian College, and these Dutch philosophers started to like jam teach history and sociology and economics and everything from a point of view that they were conscious of. That was the way that liberal arts education was really my start. So then I take that, and I'm not really a philosopher, but they kind of instilled that in me. So I went back to my father's print shop, and I started thinking about origins and history and where it came from and how it started. And like the and it was at a time when there were radicals around. It was the 60s. And they too were going back to origins like Marx and trying to figure out how to critique the American way of life. And it was also during the Vietnam War. And with with that philosophical perspective and that kind of critical, what you do really in college is think and be critical. I was very critical of everything, and and because I was sort of to the manner born, you might say, oldest of 10 kids. My father owned a print shop on the south side of Chicago. We printed a lot of newsprint for the whole south side of Chicago. I could do whatever I wanted. And I just decided okay, I'm going to print letterpress. Because it's like everybody that walks into my shop now has the same response that I did. Oh man, this is like really cool. This is like amazing. Where can I buy a press? And it was that was my response, and so I went out and bought a press. And
Why letterpress and not something else? Where was the motivation?
I'm a if you do a let's see, it's a Briggs something test. Briggs Myers test. I'm a sensing and feeling person. That means that I'm not mostly about concepts and thinking. It's about what I can touch and sense with my fingers. Astrologically, that could be described as Moon and Taurus, but Myers-Briggs, it's sensing, feeling, and that's how I come to the world. That's how I value the world, and letterpress has a lot of, like you mentioned, black and white photography. There, in a way, there's nothing like a silver print with the graduation of light and shade that you can get from a black and white photograph. But that is flat. What the variation of light and shade that you get on a classical building with all of that like dental work and all those columns and all those leaves and all that decorative stuff. It's an excuse to produce light and shade. And with a piece of letterpress printing, because it's three-dimensional, you also get that graduation of light and shade that is, everybody is very sensitive to distinguishing light and shade. I could go off on a tangent about why I think that is, but we're all like really good at it, or we do it really well, and what you do really well, you enjoy. And there's something about a page of letterpress that is enjoyable, and that's not even that it's about the reading experience. That's just looking at it. That's just one part of it. And there are other aesthetics that are layered on top of that.
What were some barriers initially? When you decided that this is what you wanted to do, you told us. You could have done anything, this is what you decided to do.
What were the barriers? It's very labor intensive. And in order for me with my, ordinarily printing is a delegated, conservative, organized business. I'm not a delegator by inclination or nature. I'm not I'm a there are clean Virgos and there are messy Virgos. I'm a messy Virgo, as you can see, and also the really I look like a nice guy, but I really don't play well with others. So that's a barrier, also, and I because of the kind of person that I am, I really, unless I'm in touch with the machinery, I won't fit into a print shop. So I had to actually physically do it. And when you actually physically do it, without any organization or multipliers, it becomes inefficient, and you can't make much or any money in a real sense that way. If you bypass the Industrial Revolution, and then you're like back in the Dark Ages. So that's sort of what the obstacle has been.
So do you work alone, or do you have a team that you're a part of, or that you lead?
I have an assistant, and I'm really thankful for him. But it's also that's about all I can handle is an assistant.
Okay. So what were some of the ways that you failed in the beginning? And how did you overcome those failures?
So I decided I would go out to this guru in Iowa City and ask him. I had bought a press, and he was from this line of printers. I thought, well, I'll go out and ask him what to do. And so I drove out to Iowa City, and he took one look at me. My eyes were like glowing, right? I was like completely wasted. And he draws an illustration of the golden section for me. He says, I don't know how I can help you. He goes, but here, take this. So then I drive back, and I'm so high and wasted that I get lost, and I'm halfway back to Chicago, and I start driving back to Iowa City for like 2 hours in the middle of the night, and then I realized, oh man, I was so lost. So then I drove back to Chicago, and so that, I don't know if that counts as a failure, but it was a funny experience that happened to me.
How did you fail? What is one way that you failed in respect to what you started? I mean, that certainly is an example of it, but maybe more.
In what ways do you feel like perhaps you have regular? Do you feel maybe you have regular failures? Like, what was the last failure that you feel like you had, and how did you overcome that? And furthermore, what's your take on failure?
Just now, right? I'm printing this job, and I have to deliver 350 of them, and I have 550 sheets, and I cannot make the press feed properly. You would think that after 40 years, I would be able to at least make the press feed sheets, but today it was very problematic. So, and if it takes you from, if it takes you like 3 hours to feed 300 sheets, a jury of my peers would call that a total bust, right? Not to mention that I spoiled the amount of time I don't care about, but there's a finite amount of very nice paper that I don't think is gonna, when it goes through 2 other processes, we're gonna have enough paper to have 350 done ones when I'm in California this weekend seeing my granddaughter. So I don't tell anybody, but I turned them over and printed the backs. I printed the backs of the spoiled sheets because they're going to be pasted together, and so that's how I solved that. It's, I don't know if that's it. Here's the mark of a good chef, right? Everything's fine. Everybody's waking up at 4 o'clock in the morning, chopping the shit out of all this stuff, and the chef is there, bossing everybody around. When the sauce is burning on the stove, right? Then the chef becomes the chef. And I have plenty of experiences with jobs going south and be able to recognize failure because you've been there, done that, and you anticipate it, and you stop it in time so that we deliver on time and there's enough.
So, what would your advice be to someone who doesn't really deal well with failure? How would you explain to them, what would your advice to them be on overcoming failure?
Here's how you learn in the print shop. You stand around, you do your work, and wait for something to go wrong. That's when you start to learn. And it's really painful, and it takes a really long time because a lot of times stuff goes along nicey. It's only at the end of the day, and when you don't want to deal with it, but then the opportunities come, and you just over and over again, you just encounter this shit that you don't want to deal with, and then after a while you have experience.
Well said. I like that. So how do you get better at what you do? Do you feel like you've hit a plateau, or do you feel like there's always room for you to get better? And if so, how do you do that?
I do it by there's a few answers to that. I do it by collaborating with others who trick me and push me into doing shit that I would rather not do. And in this business, there's plenty of people like that because we're doing 21st century designs on 15th century equipment, and then it's important for me to get enough rest so that I have the energy to bring it to what I'm doing, and also if lots of people can do like a bunch of different things and have hobbies. This girl asked me did I have a hobby? I looked at her like she was from friggin' outer space, right? and then she goes, "Is that your skateboard?" I go, "Yeah, that's my skateboard." "Yeah, that's my hobby." But just to focus on just this one thing, I've had the luxury of doing that like my whole life, and that's the only way that I can get better. Because if I do it, if I share it with something else, I don't know, I start doing jobs over again and treading water and plateauing or going down. Not, definitely not improving.
Are there any other completely different or maybe similar undertakings that you've considered starting other than this?
Well, last year I thought that I would learn how to trade trade futures, and that's what these two monitors are for. But actually not.
So
Tell us about that.
Did it not work out for you? Did you just discover that your passion is here and this is what you want to be doing? And like, what steered you away from continuing trading futures and sticking to printing letterpress?
Because you've started something before, and you've done it for a long time. You were going to start something else, so how are those two different?
I hit a. Speaking of failure, there's what I like about trading is the risk. Theoretically, I like the risk, but I'm at an age where, but I also have this ability to anticipate risk. So the thing about trading I found out was I found this guy, he sold me a system. System made perfect sense. There's something about the system and then being able to follow the system. And I'm a real flaky, random ricochet rabbit kind of person. And it's not the kind of type that is, a natural success at trading, because you have to, thick and thin, you have to trust your system and just go to work. And so in my random travels about what it would take to develop the skills to do that, I ran into something else that has to do with how your mind works, and because that trading skill is basically what goes on in your mind. And in pursuing that for a year, because the reason I got into trading was I felt like I could get hit by a bus tomorrow, but I got a plan to live to be 100, because and trading, if I sat here at a desk and learned how to trade, it would be not as labor intensive as printing letterpress. But and it's still kind of an option. I got the system, and if I lost my leg or something, if I couldn't print letterpress, I'd go back to learning how to trade. But with what I learned about my mind, it renewed my confidence in being able to keep on printing letterpress.
So how do you define success with respect to what you do?
Success, that's a great question. Success. Does it matter? Rats on the let's see. How does that line go? Rats on the west side, bedbugs uptown. What a mess. This town's in tatters. That's from the Stones. Success. Doesn't matter. Let's see. And John Maynard Keynes. They go, well, what about, because he was a deficit spender. They go, what about the long term, right? What did he say? What about in the long run? We are all dead. So that mortality is a great equalizer. And because I'm 64, you guys are going to live forever. And I was going to live forever when I was your age, but now I'm 64. But I won't quote that line about 64. Everybody knows it. So what is success? It's it has to do, for me, with something that's sustainable. It has to do with if I can create an emotional response, I feel like I'm successful. As far as success as a in this business, it's very much not what happens at the end. Like Gutenberg had his print shop taken away from him, and he died in obscurity. And so personally, he was a bust. But he produced this, maybe the most amazing invention that was ever invented. And that is not, Gutenberg is not, unfortunately, an exception. It's the rule. So people that step out and do shit, a lot of, especially in the printing history, their personal success at the end is it just doesn't happen. And for me, my kids are still in my life, but I ran away from home when I was 30, did a whole bunch of stuff wrong just in order to print letterpress. And I do have a car, but it's a 1990 subcompact. I live in a typical New York closet right across the street, so I can walk across the street and go to work. It's a rooming house. It's not personal success, but I do like to brag about who I print for. That to me is success. To serve like Obama, Mitt Romney, Barney's, Ralph Lauren is in the shop here, plus all these 20-somethings like yourselves who are jazzed about this thing that's obsolete. So I'm living, for today, I'm still having too good of a time, which I would call success, to do anything else or want to do anything else.
It's legit.
That's definitely success.
Yeah. I feel like that was a good closing statement. We do have one more question.
Well, we do want to hear. Yeah, we want to hear what what advice you have for people who would want to start something. Something that they're passionate about. Something that they want to start, but haven't done so yet.
Don't go into debt to do it. And find somebody who knows how to do it. It's the old Tony Robbins thing. You know, find somebody who knows how to do it and just get on them like white on rice. And, you know, just suck up as much as you can from somebody who knows how to do what you want to do. It's not easy to really to do that, to, you know, not to get religious, because I'm not religious, but drop everything and follow Jesus or whatever, whoever Jesus is for you. But it's that's what I did, and I didn't. I mean, I really hurt a lot of people by doing that, and it's not like right, but it's the only way. Oh, glad you liked it.